Because here in the third density, we all seem like we're separate from each other, that there isn't anything that really binds us together other than maybe our color of our skin, our thoughts, our jobs that we do, thoughts we think. But all of those are just manifestations of the creator that's moving through us and to help us in a way to become aware that we are all one. Yeah. We're all here to discover that we have a journey to take. The creator is everything. So in order for us to be able to reunify with the creator, we need to balance, use the catalyst that's given to us.
Welcome, Jim, to Dark Matters. We're very honoured to have you with us. We're going to be speaking today about the Law of One. The Law of One is a series of 106 channeled conversations called sessions between Don Elkins, a professor of physics and UFO investigator, with Ra, a humble messenger of the Law of One, a six-density social memory complex that formed on Venus approximately 2 billion years ago, speaking through the channel Carla Rueckert, and scribed by our very special guest, Jim McCarty. So I'm Carly Subl.
I'm Johnny Standing. Welcome, Jim. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on your program. I'm glad to be here. I always love talking about the Law of One.
Yeah, it's had such a profound impact on my life. As I was just saying off camera, I studied the Law of One approximately about 10 years ago, and it's just had it's something that I actually live my life by. As I say, I tend to explain the Law of One as quantum mechanical galactic handbooks. As you have said, Jim, it's a feeling, isn't it, when you read them? It resonates so deeply. I watched you in an interview, and we've been doing a bit of our homework, yes, and you said it's a letter from home, and I deeply resonated with that. So how would you begin to explain the Law of One material in a short synopsis, say for our viewers or somebody who hasn't come across the Law of One before, if that's even at all possible with your wealth of experience and understanding it? And obviously we'll go into the different roles that you, Don and Carla, had. As I say, you were the scribe to the Law of One. Unfortunately, Don and Carla aren't with us anymore. But yeah, how would you explain the Law of One to somebody who's just come across the material?
Well, it's basically, I would say, it's part of what's called the Perennial Philosophy. All of the major religions of the world, in their mystical aspect, have this concept of the one creator that exists in all things, has made everything, and is here for us to begin our spiritual journeys back into unification with the creator. Because here in the third density, we all seem like we're separate from each other, that there isn't anything that really binds us together other than maybe our color of our skin, our thoughts, our jobs that we do, thoughts we think. But all of those are just manifestations of the creator that's moving through us and to help us in a way to become aware that we are all one. And this third density has what's called the veil of forgetting, which keeps us from really seeing that. It separates our conscious and our subconscious minds, so that actually it's a way that they discovered millions of years ago would help people graduate from the third density into the fourth and continue going through the octave of densities back into unity with the creator. So we're all here to discover that we have a journey to take. And here in the third density, in order to get to the fourth density, we need to open our hearts in unconditional love. And that will help us. If we can do that just 51% of the time, point the needle of the compass, then we can make that graduation. And then we will be beyond the veil of forgetting, and we will be back to seeing things the way they really are. But if we can make that choice of being of service to others here with that veil, it carries a lot more weight in our total beingness. So That's why we have the veil, and that's what we're here for. And we're all part of the Creator, moving in unity, you might say, in a dance through the octave of creation.
That's beautiful, yeah. So can I take it that a density is kind of like a dimension of some sort? A density?
Yes, they're basically the same thing. Ra uses the term density because they're talking about the density of light. Each density has more and more light in it. It gives us more and more of an ability to appreciate the Creator in a greater and more intense manner. Densities are sort of like going through the chakras of your body. The intelligent energy or the prana of the Creator comes through our red ray, moves up all the way through. So each energy center or chakra gives us an expanded way of experiencing the Creator. So the same thing happens with the densities of light for everybody that goes through them.
So is it the higher the density, the more the spiritual experiences and knowledge that you would gain? Would that be correct?
Right. The fourth density is considered the density of love, and love and understanding, which we don't have understanding here yet. We're working on trying to understand the creation. That's why Ra gave the law of one to us and came through Carla, so that we could begin to grasp more of the nature of our reality. So the fourth density is love. The fifth density is wisdom, which would correspond to the throat chakra. And the sixth density is the balance of love and wisdom, which would be the brow chakra. And these give us more ways of experiencing the Creator in the ways that can be of more service to others. Because when entities form what's called a social memory complex here on Earth, if they're able to do that, and however many entities are able to open their heart in unconditional love 51% of the time, then they move on to the fourth density and become a social memory complex, which is like a transitional stage of becoming in unity with the Creator. In the fourth density, then we practice love. And the fifth density has more power to it, you might say, more wisdom. And that allows a greater expansion of our consciousness to feel and see and become the Creator. And the sixth density then is the balance of the love and the wisdom, so that there is a way there of being of more service to others when you have become a sixth density being, as Ra was. So they were hoping to be able to share more of the law of one through us, because they'd had a problem with the Egyptians 11,000 years ago of being perceived as gods, and their message was misperceived. And
I think that's the thing that we kind of experience in this density, that kind of hijack of that information by what we call the dark, as I say, to hijack kind of our consciousness to do that role in service to the one infinite Creator. It's interesting with the octaves. It works Johnny's a musician, so we were discussing this earlier, and how that the octave works as in an octave of music. There's a really nice line in the Law of One that says the Creator plucks harmony, and Johnny will probably take over this far and explain this far greater than I. But obviously, as the densities move through from the first to the eighth is the start of the next, right. and then it kind of begins again. We watched one of your interviews with Roland. I won't try and pronounce his last name, but it was a really good interview.
Yeah, it's a nice man.
And you quoted this, so I'd like to quote it back at you, and perhaps we can discuss it here. We can perhaps dive into what an octave is. But I thought this explained it really well. So it says, at the eighth density, everything, every experience, and every choice that every entity has ever made in every incarnation coalesces into what we would see as the black hole. All light drawn into the black hole, all creation drawn into the black hole, so that this information or harvest of this octave of densities, and that's the 8, may be more readily available in more profound and personal sense to the one infinite Creator. This white light that emanates and forms as it refracts, as I understand it, forms this particular sublogos, which is our sun. has its beginning in darkness in the first density. Light comes into that darkness and transfigures it, causing chaos or darkness to organize, becoming reflective and radiant. Thus, the dimensions come into being. Conversely, the blackness of the black hole metaphysically is this concentration of this white light. And as I read the Law of One back in the day, they talked about the physicist Dewey Larson, and how I kind of understand it in my head, because I'm no physicist, is that it begins at the event horizon from the previous octave, containing all that information, a white dwarf star, and it blows out like a giant heartbeat. And it kind of gains that infinite mass, comes back in on itself, and it begins again with all that information from the previous octave. So I've actually I actually tattooed Dewey Larson's equation for that on my arm when I was younger. I was that blown away, and I tried to read his paper on reciprocal theory. That was intense. So in the end, I found a guy who'd done a summary on it. So I think, in relation to the octave of music and our understanding of how, the densities work universe literally means one song. It's quite difficult, isn't it, with our human minds to kind of even have the language or the ability to express this. And I'm trying my best to do it, but I can't do it as well as you, Jim. So how would you kind of explain that kind of, I suppose what would be good for people to know who don't know the Law of One, what the difference is between the one infinite creator and a logos and a sub logos, because we use these terms interchangeably, but people might be going, what?
Well, in the beginning, there was intelligent infinity, and there was nothing yet in the creation. Then intelligent infinity became aware, and that awareness is what we call the first distortion, or free will. And the creator then, or the intelligent infinity, they're the same thing, decided that it wanted to know itself. And the way that it would do that is to create a universe that would give it opportunities to know itself, because it would focus its free will through what we call love, or a logos. A logos is the creator of a galaxy, like our Milky Way galaxy is created by a logos. And there are sublogoi, such as our sun, that are portions of this creation. So that when the creator focused its free will desire to know itself through love, or the logoi, then the other portion of the creation was manifested through light. So light, according to Dewey Larson, is the vibration of various molecules or qualities of light that go in various angles and speeds of rotation. This is the photon. And the photons then are what we see in our material world. Everything we think is a thing that you can tap on is actually photons vibrating at angles and speeds of rotation. So there's actually more distance between the material we see than what we think that's there. So that's the way the creator decided to know itself. And these different angles of rotation have also created the densities, the seventh density into the eighth, which again blends, as you said, into another beginning. So there's as you were talking about, a heartbeat, a giant heartbeat that's billions of years long. The first density, there's a timeless portion where everything seems to be chaos. But then when finally the scroll of time is unrolled, as Ross said, then that first density is 2 billion years long. And that first density is just earth, wind, fire, and water. And eventually, and that's just simple awareness. But then in the second density, the fire and wind teach earth and water to be formed into what we see as rivers and lakes and the earth, so that life can spring forth. And in the second density, where their life is coming forth, it's 4.6 billion years long. So different times life can evolve also. They have minds and bodies, and eventually have a spirit. Ross suggested pets are ways of many second density entities becoming third density as we inspirit them, or develop a love relationship between us. They can give and receive love, and then that activates their spirit. And then the third density is only 75,000 years long. It's really short because it's here. We're here for making that choice. And as we make that choice, then we can go on to the fourth density, which is 30 million years long. And the fifth density is somewhere around 50 million years long. And Ross said their sixth density was 75 million years long. So as we go through the densities, it's longer. And then the density of foreverness, which is the seventh density, as its title suggests, doesn't have a real measure to it. So that's where we become to reunify with the Creator again in total reunification in the eighth density. So that's how we play our lives throughout the densities, starting in the first one.
Oh, that's beautiful. So would it be correct to say also that there are no conditions that are needed for the Creator? It permeates everything, so that we are, as part of that creation, are God in a sense, because the Creator, anyway, that's just rather a better word for it, is both within and without us.
Right.
Yeah, we are mainly within that creation, not actually fully in the without as well. In other words, we have conditions for us to arise, whereas the Creator needs no conditions. He is infinite.
Right. The Creator is everywhere. There's nothing that is not the Creator. In everything that exists, the Creator has a way of knowing itself. And that's the whole purpose of creation. And we have a chance to know ourselves and the Creator. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
All right. So I think I'd be probably, this is what I've been thinking about, the polarity of negative and positive, because I, from a really young age, 15, decided that the most important thing in my life was love. And it was that I pursued. So I read every book I could on it. It's in scriptures, it's not in scriptures, but it's more of a heartfelt thing. And I've tried to develop that through meditation over the years and through all different types of means. And it's become my life. So that up until this point right now, and I'm 65, by the way, so that started a long time ago. So really, I mean, I fell off my steed a lot, Jim. There's so many distractions and, this and that, and relationships that go astray and things like that. But I've learned that it's forgiveness in all things, because even those who are in some kind of negative polarity, I tend to feel that it's a lack of awareness of the unconditional love which needs to be developed in us that's holding them back from making a positive step forward in the sense of working in service to others, so to speak.
Well, I suppose it's the density of choice, isn't it? 3D is the density of choice. And before the veil came down, it was Adenic, according to the law of one. We knew self as other self. We knew the Creator as part of us. But as I say, this extension of ourselves, knowing ourselves as the Creator before the veil came down, and the veil, as I say, flip it around, it's evil. The veil came down to offer the polarity, or to offer the choice. And we've obviously, the first distortion in the law of one is free will. So we've kind of, we chose it. We were given the choice, we chose it. And for me, the way I interpret it is we've been choosing it ever since. But because it had kind of got a little bit inert before the veil came down, and we were offered this polarity so that the Creator could know itself more extensively with more experience. Like I said, we were introduced this polarity. So you're either going to be service to self or service to others. Yeah. And the way that I look at it is that even the service to others, we just give, or service to self, if that's the choice that they've made, and they have to be 95% serviced to themselves, which is far more difficult than being 51% service to others. It's such a harder path. We give them love anyway, because that is still a service here in this third density to the one infinite Creator. So the veil of forgetting came down, and that's created that seeking. I always say, and I think the dark are here to show us what we are not, or if you're going to choose the service to self path, what it is you aspire to be, or what it is you want to be. with recent events, especially, you know, with the release of the coronavirus and the pandemic for the last, you know, 3 years or so, and coronavirus from the Latin, my background is etymology and law. I do the legal system. So corona means crown and virus means poison. So it actually means crown poison. And do you think, Jim, that the experience, obviously, this darkness that's kind of come, which has always been there, but I think I always make a joke saying the dark are going, what can we come up with next? Like, so, you know, so that they kind of have that, you know, we have that ability to go inward and seek, and we, you know, they keep this distraction, don't they? And in the Law of One, they talk a lot about the tarot and the left-hand path and the right-hand path. The right hand being the protected path of service to others and service to self to the left. And do you think that even though we're experiencing quite a lot of, I mean, the darkness has always been there, but I always say it's not even hidden anymore. It's kind of in plain sight. That this, because it's always paradoxes in the Law of One, isn't it? So paradoxically, I think a lot of people have been cut off from source because of perhaps this attack on the crown, which for me is the, you know, the connection to source, or that they've got into a fear, you know, they've got into a fear state and a state of disconnect. But it's also amazingly been this catalyst for people to really seek, and we're seeing this explosion, certainly here in the UK and across the world, of people starting to ask, hang on a minute, why am I here? What is this? Who am I? And it's been such a catalyst for people. And do you find that that's LL research, that you've seen more seeking and like an awakening, really, I suppose, for want of a better word, maybe?
Oh, definitely. Over the years, I mean, if you go back to the time of the raw contact and the 20 or 30 years after that, we were pretty much unknown. Nobody had really heard about the Law of One or raw or LL research. But since the turn of the century and each succeeding year, there's more and more people that are interested in the Law of One, that are visiting our website, are downloading our PDFs that we have for free, all the information we've ever, gotten at LL Research through channeling. It's just exploded. There's so many more people that are waking up. And in our public channeling meditations that we have now, that we began again last November after taking the break from COVID, there's more information about people waking up, that this is something that's happening around the world. And we've had, I guess we have probably translators have given us 22 different languages now that the Law of One is in on our website. You can click on it, and it'll, in those 22 languages that it's been translated into, the whole website will go into that language. So there's more people around the world that have been translating the work for us, and whole new countries and languages are being introduced to the Law of One.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it's that infinite, that kind of, I call it the quantum monkey, Jim. Like there's a group of monkeys eating nuts on one island. I don't know if you've heard of the quantum monkey, but one monkey decides that on this particular day to go and wash its nuts in the salty seawater, and goes, actually, these taste better. And there's another lot of monkeys of the same not breed, what do I mean? But they're on a different island, and then it collectively, they started to wash their nuts, so to speak, in the sea. And it's this kind of quantum, we're all one, aren't we? So I think if there's enough of us just to make that tip, and I know you called it the wild card of Ra, and this seeking of the Law of One, this increase, it's so heartwarming, because we know that, as you said in the interview, one giant sweep, one fine, strong moment of inspiration, and this planet, or the people on the planet, because I believe the mother Gaia is actually already in 4D positive time space, and the people on it are lagging behind. Hence, the Wanderers incarnated to raise that planetary vibration. But it's absolutely possible that it's possibility, probability, always in the Law of One, isn't it? It might not be probable, but it's possible. And I'm like, come on, let's do it,
Yeah. Well, I've always hoped, that I never knew, and still don't, what could initiate that one fine, strong moment of inspiration.
Yeah.
But whatever it is. I'm hoping it happens here soon.
Yeah.
And I think it's love, isn't it? If we want to kind of, and I suppose, you know, it's interesting to talk about wanderers as well. You know, we use that term and we all kind of know what a wanderer is. But as they say, the call was made to the galactics to, you know, the call was made from the planet and the people on it for aid and assistance, and those in service to the one infinite creator. They call us the foolhardy and the brave, the wanderers, and everyone else is not risking coming to the veil of forgetting and risking millions of light years of, you know, evolution and going. So I had a wanderer experience, and I'm going to be a little bit, you know, indulgent, because I'd really like to get your thought on it. And so they called us the foolhardy and the brave. So the way that I look at it is, we all kind of went, I'll go, you know. And according to the law of one, we sign up generally for 2 cycles, and the harvests are in 25,000 year cycles, 25, 50, 75, if I'm getting that correct. So I had an experience, and I'll try and do a summary of it. But cutting a very long story short, I was reading the Law of One book on a train. And while I was on a train that day, I don't really catch trains, but I was. And something just clicked in my mind. And I was like, oh, I get it. And something, I had this peaceful feeling. And again, cutting a long story short, I went to bed that evening and I didn't wake up. It was, I would explain it as thought form. I was visited. There was a big bell-shaped craft outside the window, and I lived in quite a small house, so it wasn't really there as we perceive reality. But my dream was interrupted, and I had 3 light beings at the end of the bed, and they said, "We have come to show you." And it went, there was like a resonance, like, wow, 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 we have come to show you, wow, wow. And they threw up this prism, Jim, and it went, and it was like obviously going in here. And I was kind of like almost in a sleep paralysis, but like, and then it went, and I breathed, and I went, what the? Now I was only halfway through, or just finishing the first book. And my partner at the time, he'd read all of them. So I messaged him at 4 o'clock in the morning, told him the tale. And he said, OMG. He says, and he sent me the passage out of book 3, I believe it's in, where it says that wanderers will have a visitation of sorts, but they won't interfere with your own free will, being the first distortion. I suppose I made that call that day in a way in my realization, and that they came. And it says that the wanderer will have an experience that will be the most meaningful for them. And since then, I've gone, I kind of know who I am and what I am and why I'm here. You know, I think I've pushed through the veil of forgetting, hence, I suppose, why we're having this conversation. If I hadn't, I perhaps wouldn't be here. But so I just kind of wanted to share that with you and see what your thoughts were on it. And also to ask if, obviously, you can't have a more profound experience than being the scribe for the Law of One. So, but perhaps, you know, if have you ever had something similar or?
Not really, but I do think that there's a good chance that you might have been visited by those of Ra, because they said that after they were able to channel through Akhenaten about 3,300 years ago, they didn't have any other way of making contact with people on Earth, so they would visit them in dreams and help to awaken them. So that might be what you experienced. I haven't had any such experience like that. I've always felt that I was, you know, not really from this world, that this is rather alien to me. But it's a place that you have to make yourself comfortable.
Yeah. I have that feeling all my life, pretty much. I just wondered, because I had experiences as well, but I wasn't asleep. And when I was about 7 years old, I had a light, you know, like someone would say it was a light bulb moment, but all it said was, you will never die. Now, even at 7, I knew that we were going to die, because, you know, my grandparents had died. I didn't want my granddads to die before that. So I understood the concepts enough, even at that young age. But that stayed with me. And it's been like a flagpost memory. When I look back, it's like some spiritual event that took place. Cutting it short a little bit, when I was 27, the same experience happened again, only this time, when it lasted 20 seconds, there was no statement in it. But I went home and wrote down something. I was writing it down for a week. I'd just finished from a 20-second experience, exactly the same things from when I was 7. And what that was like the within without. It was a bit, that's how I studied it at the time. But since then, I've come to understand the without as the unconditioned, the all in the all, the creator, the the whatever everyone wants to call it. Some people call it God, but it's the unconditioned to me. Everything else seems to have had conditions for it to arise, and it's dependent upon the mind to play through that. And I feel as though I'm developing a spirit inside myself as I go through life. But the question that I was going to ask you was, do you think there's any correspondence from other beings in higher densities with those in lower densities? I mean, because here with the veil of forgetting in third density, it doesn't seem feasible, but at the same time, people in higher densities, can they have correspondence with those in lower densities, say above third density?
Oh, definitely. In various ways. I mean, you just talked about something that happened to you when you were a kid. Very likely that was from higher density, or maybe from your higher self, which is the sixth density. I think also you all mentioned UFOs. Very often, UFO experiences are used to awaken wanderers. Sometimes they, we had a fellow who is our vice president of the board of directors, Morris Hoagland, when he was here in Louisville, in South Louisville, 8 years old, he and 3 of his playmates were outside just having a good time, and this little UFO landed, and he couldn't see the first one, and the entity got out and shot some sort of a little energy gun and sort of quieted the 2 other kids. And Morris, like, he couldn't see what was happening to them. Ross said that he was told by an inner voice, go to another place. And there he saw the UFO, but it was a positive one. The first one was negative. So the one that he saw was positive, and it awakened him at that time. And one of the ways that it manifested was that his mother, for some reason, we've never really understood, that was at the time that Don Elkins was teaching physics at the University of Louisville. So she called the university to see if anybody there had any ideas about UFOs. And so they got a hold of Don, because Don didn't hide his interest in UFOs. He was right up front with everything he was doing. So he came out and talked to Morris and did a regression and saw that he was a wanderer. And so I think that UFO experiences are one way that people can be awakened. Sometimes they're just, sometimes they're taken on board. Sometimes it's something like this with Morris happens. Or sometimes people just see a UFO that nobody else sees. They have what's called the eyes to see.
Yeah.
And that seeing of the UFO kind of awakens in them a question. What is a UFO? What was that? Are the people beyond our experience here on Earth? The mystery. If they begin looking into the mystery of the UFO, then Ross suggested that was a way that people could be spiritually awakened. And usually they're wanderers that are awakened in that way.
Yeah, I've had an interest in UFOs for a long time now, and I've watched every video you could possibly look at.
Yeah.
And listened to as many people of their experiences. And I'm big into that. We have seen a UFO. Funnily enough, Carly had put on a festival called Spellfest, and there was 12 of us came out of a marquee, and one was right above us. It was a ball of light with another ball of light around that. And it moved in such a strange way, and we were all just in awe. 12 of us were seeing that at the same time. And this is only, 2 years ago?
Yeah. And
so
I think,
it's wonderful when something like that happens, because it can't be taken from you. You see it, but you feel it as well.
Yeah.
There's the sensation of knowing that you're looking at something and you don't know really what it is. But I love that mystery anyway, because I like mysticism.
Yeah,
the unknown, and I like to try and probe it as best I can. And having experiences like that Lovely, actually.
Yeah.
I just think it's helpful.
And I think it's interesting to know, isn't that, you know, outside of our 3D reality, and according to Dewey Larson, again, I may be getting this wrong, I may be a little bit rusty, but that this is space-time, and space is the field and time is the river, but outside in 4D, time is space, time is the field and space is the river, so they can kind of move, or the 4D view, you know, in 3D, and the 3D view in 2D, but the outside in 4D negative time space is the Orion group, and they kind of have their influence here, just in again in service to the infinite creator. But there's also the Galactic Confederation in service to the infinite creator in 4D positive. I always think of it as like Star Wars, really. And the again, I think it said in the Law of One, the positive Galactic Confederation don't want to fight the Orion group, but they have to maintain the balance. It's like the balance in the Force almost. So it's interesting. I mean, and the Law of One is such a huge study in and of itself. There's no way we're ever going to. I mean, these are like as I say, galactic quantum mechanical handbooks of epic proportion. I remember early on reading, as I said to you earlier, Jim, like one paragraph and then staring at the wall in just complete amazement for at least 5 minutes. And now it's like a second language to me. But like I say, we can't comprehend it. But one question I'd like to ask you, because as a lawyer, I know that the elites, I'm heavily into numerology and gematria and etymology, and the code of the legal system is very interesting. Saturn, it comes from Lord of the Rings, and the Galactic Council, if I'm getting this correct, reside in the rings, interdimensionally speaking, in the rings of Saturn. Now, the legal system is obsessed with Saturn worship and cube worship, and they wear the Saturnian robes of the judge. The Tephilim is a black cube, and it goes on and on without kind of going on and on about it. I wanted to ask you, I know the veil of forgetting that we experience in this 3D is condensed by time. And that's another thing that they worship. They worship Saturn, which is Father Kronos, which is Father Time. And Johnny said to me that Saturn is called the second sun. Now, I might be getting this wrong as well, but our sun, apparently of our Logos, it was one of the first planets to be created. I think the first child of the Logos, they say, but whether I'm getting that right. But the Council of Nine, and in service to the infinite creator for the Galactic Confederation, they reside in these Saturnian rings. So my theory is that this nod of the dark, shall we call, you know, the service to self polarity, they are kind of having this nod to the fact that they know, they have this esoteric wisdom of perhaps what's going on here, and they are almost nodding to the Council of Nine, which is in Saturn, in service to the infinite creator, that they're nodding to the service that they are almost, you know, performing here, if that makes sense. So I don't know what your thoughts were about that. Like I say, even the coronation of the king recently, when you decode it, it's all about this nod to time, this nod to matter, this nod to Saturn worship, which is Saturn, Satan set to them, and they want the great reset. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that. It's just something that I'm kind of slightly obsessed by. I find it very interesting.
Well, if I'm understanding what you're saying, you say that Saturn in some philosophies of negative beingness has a prominence in that philosophy.
Very, very much so. It threads the whole legal and lawful system back to Rome, back to kind of that satanic Roman civil system. It's all in their codes, all in their language. It's in the legalese and in the etymology of words. It's this Saturnian worship. And I just wondered if they were nodding to the Council of Nine, maybe.
Well, to be honest, no, I don't know anything about Saturn in the negative sense. The only information we got from Ra concerned the Council of Nine that were located in the rings of Saturn, not in Saturn itself.
Yes,
but
that's
in the rings. And they were basically, their job or function is to help, I guess, enforce a quarantine on planet Earth so that any entities that want to come here have to have permission to go through the quarantine. because when the first entities were transferred from Mars to Earth 75,000 years ago at the beginning of our cycle, those entities were transferred because they had destroyed their planet, well, the atmosphere on their planet, and it was no longer livable for third density beings. So they came here. But one of the guardians called Yahweh, who was positively oriented, apparently went too far in attempting to use what we would call the cloning process to help those entities from Mars become more able to learn the ways of love. And because of that, then there was a quarantine so that any other entities, positive or negative, that wanted to come to Earth to be of service in their chosen polarity would have to go through the quarantine or would be blocked, mostly in the negative sense. So that is the basis of what I have learned from Ra about the Council of Saturn and Saturn itself. Now, I don't know if there's something different about the planet Saturn as opposed to the rings of Saturn.